What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. It's not often that you get to do a review of an episode of a show that is not only a season finale, but also a series finale, but also in a lot of ways, kind of an unofficial series finale for yet another show, which started back in 2008 because in all kinds of delicious ways, the two shows of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad just kept rubbing up against each other during this remarkable episode. And what the hell do you even say about the finale of a show where we've been watching it off and on for 14 years, where through the great writing and the great cast and the incredible crew, they've maintained a standard of storytelling excellence that we almost never see. And just to put it in context, we had 63 episodes of Better Call Saul with 46 Emmy nominations. There were 62 episodes of Breaking Bad and a spin-off movie, El Camino. That's a hell of a lot of hours of entertainment, all of which is like above and beyond the great majority of film and television out there. And so, once again, what the hell do you even say apart from just thank you to Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould and the cast and the crew for keeping us enthralled on our couches for all this time. I mean, like I said, it's a third of my life we've been in this world watching this shit, and I've pretty much loved every single second of it. And my first and only love is film, and a common complaint amongst aging film fans is always, well, there's nothing at the theater worth seeing. It's all for toddlers and young children and blah, blah, blah. And like, where are all the great art house films? Where are all the great, future classic films, etc.? But if I just always try to redirect them towards this remarkable series, this remarkable story, because if your jam is classic movies and film noir and art house entertainment, it's like, well, this latest kind of second half season, mostly in black and white, that's as good as any art house content as you're going to find, but also way more entertaining. And I mean, it's film noir with jokes, and it's hard to think of many examples like that in our present entertainment climate. But not only has this show been a huge part of all of our lives as viewers, think about the crew members that have been there every step of the way, like Dave Porter. Like, try to imagine Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul without this signature music. There is a flavor to Better Call Saul. There's a flavor to this world, and part of that is the look, the astonishing cinematography, the great angles, the great lighting. But the sounds of this world are unique, and I think we're all going to miss it. So if you are dreading the prospect of a future with no more Better Call Saul in your life, let me talk about two bits of news related to this show before my official review. Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould, they've been doing a lot of interviews recently about what could come next, and there was an article that I found where they said, never say never, you can keep putting all your money on Red 21. I feel like we probably pushed it doing a spinoff to Breaking Bad, but I could not be more happy with the results than I did El Camino, and I'm very proud of that too. But I'm starting to sense you've got to know when to leave the party. You don't want to be the guy with a lampshade in your head, Gilligan said. I don't have any plans right now to do anything more in this universe. I know I probably gave the same answer at the end of Breaking Bad. I got to prove to myself that I've got something else in me. I'm not a one-trick pony. That's what I'm hoping. Then Peter Gould added that 127 hours is a lot of time. That's a big investment to ask for an audience, and it's unique. How dramas are going to get that much time. I couldn't be happier or more proud of the work, but like Vince, here's where the article gets a little funky because it says, but like Vince, I think I want to try. There are some things I wanted to try. I think that's a typo, but having said that, I love Albuquerque, I love Bob, and I love Ray, I love Vince, love the whole group. So we'll keep as much of the band together as we can, and also never say never. Who knows how we're going to feel in a couple of years. So as a very satisfied viewer, I could totally live with them walking away. But we're not going to have to wait long for what Vince Gilligan's next show might be. Apparently, he has a new project, and here are the details that I read over at Deadline. It reads, as Better Call Saul is coming to an end, series co-creator and Breaking Bad creator Vince Gilligan is ready for what comes next. And once again, for his next drama project, he is going with a wholly original idea. No one would comment, but there is a lot of anticipation in the marketplace for the pitch, which is expected to come out in the next couple of weeks, with at least 8 to 9 networks and platforms lined up to hear it. The new project, which comes from Sony Pictures TV, where Gilligan has been under an overall deal for a long time, is a departure from the world of drugs and crime he explored in Breaking Bad and its prequel Better Call Saul, whose series finale airs August 15th. Word is that the new show harkens back to Gilligan's tenure on The X-Files, but don't expect a sci-fi drama. When he was a writer-producer on The X-Files, Gilligan was known for focusing more on the human condition in his episodes, which is something he is said to also be doing in his new series, exploring similar themes or bending reality while holding a mirror up to humanity. Described as a blended, grounded genre drama, the new series also is being compared to The Twilight Zone. It is said to be set in a world while putting a tweak on it, focusing on people and exploring the human condition in an unexpected, surprising way. So, sign my ass up. I will watch whatever Vince Gilligan or Peter Gould want to do next. When it comes to assembling a great writing team, a great directing team, a great ensemble cast, clearly they are two of the best in the biz, as the last 14, 15 years has proven. But let's get into tonight's series finale, which was written and directed by Peter Gould. And I think rather than doing a complete recap of every single beat and every single moment, instead I'm going to focus on the scenes that really jumped out at me. And what I love most about this episode is that it gave us a chance to see Jimmy or Saul or Gene or whatever you want to call him, seeing him have not necessarily heart-to-hearts, but great final encounters with the key characters of this show at different points in the timeline of the show. And it was absolutely riveting, just the insights it gave us into his character, or the lack of insights that it gave us into his character. But the key scenes were obviously with Mike, when we get the flashback of them out in the desert, with Jimmy with his underwear on his head, talking about getting in a time machine and going back and giving Warren Buffett $500,000 in 1965 when he first started running Berkshire Hathaway and how he wanted to be a billionaire. But I love how Mike, he kind of sizes Jimmy up and realizes that all he ever really wanted was money, and that there's nothing in his life where he would make any changes. And yeah, nobody can size up somebody better than Mike. And I guess now's as good a time as any to say goodbye to Jonathan Banks and his incredible performance as Mike. I've been watching him in movies and shows my entire life, and I don't know when he plans on retiring. I hope it's no time soon, but that voice and that stare and that persona and that gravitas, holy shit. I mean, maybe I'm going to miss him more than anyone else. But then we get a few action scenes, and I love how we get to see Jimmy just hitting absolute rock bottom. Like he's sitting in a dumpster with all sorts of nasty shit all over his arm, dropping diamonds, trying to call that vacuum repair line. Cops bust him, and I love how first thing he does at jail is he calls Cinnabon, tells him they need to look for a new manager. And one of the funniest bits all episode, because even though this was a very kind of somber, serious episode in a lot of ways, but when Jimmy in his jail cell sees somebody carved in the wall, "My lawyer will ream your ass," and he just starts howling with laughter. I just love that. I mean, Bob Odenkirk, his foundation, his roots are all in comedy, and every time they let him be funny in this show, it is always a winning strategy. And along those lines, it's funny as hell seeing him call Bill Oakley and telling him to fly to Omaha, and how, we get to see how the old Jimmy confidence is back. And that's one thing I was worried about in this final episode, is whether or not they would try and destroy his character, destroy that confidence. And I feel like this episode found a delicate balance where they could have their cake and eat it too, where we got moments where we got to see him with that old swagger, with his old negotiating skills, but at the same time, seeing him have a slightly redemptive moment toward the end, basically throwing himself on his sword in order to protect Kim from having her life ruined after she made that confession to Howard's wife. So he gets a little bit of a redemption arc, but at the same time, he's still an anti-hero. And that's why I've loved this show, and that's why I've loved Breaking Bad. I like stories of anti-heroes. I like people who are morally compromised, charismatic people with deep character flaws. And one of the ways that we're vividly reminded of his character flaws is when Maurice Schrader's brought in with an incredible kind of extension of Breaking Bad, just to talk about Hank's positive qualities and how he and his partner were left in a hole in the desert. And then we get to see Saul, slimy as ever, countering with his own story about meeting Walter White and talking about how he was a victim too and all that stuff, and how he was afraid of Walter. And that's when I was just kind of in awe of how a show that started in 2008, not quite a different show, but a different show. And I was like, oh my God, is this like the last episode of Breaking Bad, or what is this? But just seeing how these two shows are totally interwoven, it's hard to think of many examples in pop culture where we've seen that kind of story structure and getting emotional beats in 2022 that pay off from a show that ended many, many years ago. But at any rate, it was just delightful seeing the way these two shows came together. And no better example of that than when we get the Walter White flashback while they're waiting for pickup. Once again, white t-shirts, tighty-whities, just hanging out. Walter's at work fixing this hot water problem, and Saul resurrects this conversation that he had with Mike about what you would do if you had a time machine. And what was so satisfying is getting to see Bryan Cranston give us one final exasperated lecture about science and quantum mechanics. And I'd kind of forgotten how much fun it was getting to see him in like chemistry teacher mode as opposed to, crime lord mode. But we're so accustomed to thinking of Walter as such an intimidating force. But in the end, he is just this chemistry teacher who made a crucial mistake back in college where he allowed an idea that he'd come up with to kind of be taken away from him and then developed into a very successful company by his friends. And I love how Jimmy's like, oh my God, like, why have you never brought this up? Like, we could have totally done this and that. And Walter's like, you are the last lawyer that I would have ever approached to help me with this. And I was just howling with glee. And I'm sure every single fan of both these shows was just, rolling on the floor, just with total delight with this scene, because this is kind of the emotional crux of both shows coming together, where you've got two anti-heroes sitting on beds facing each other. Two stars of these two shows both have tons of charisma, but goddamn, they are flawed. I don't know if you would call them evil men, but they are capable of incredible evil. I mean, a lot of people died as a result of their career ambitions. And if you were going to point to something that's kind of the emotional peak of the two shows colliding together, it's got to be that scene. And what's great is how Walter calls him out on the fact that he's like, look, we're not talking about time travel. What we're talking about is regret. So why don't we just really get into what you're actually trying to drive at? And Saul admits that his only real regret is a slip and fall from when he was like 20 years old. And Walter just has this incredible moment where he realizes, you were always like this. And once again, I was screaming with laughter, and it's a great way to bring the scene to a close. But then we cut back to the black and white present where Jimmy learns that Kim opened herself up to a civil suit due to her signed testimony. So while the DA will never probably pursue her, she will always be poor and once again, there's no evidence to support like a criminal case, but she will get sued left and right for the rest of her life. So Jimmy decides that he's going to try and do the right thing by basically absorbing all the blame on the Howard story. As he describes it, it's really good ice cream. We see that Kim is volunteering at this Central Florida legal aid when she gets a call from Susan Erickson. She goes back to New Mexico for this trial, and the trial is incredible. It opens with this great slow motion sequence with Jimmy arriving in this grotesque, vulgar suit. There's this great tune that I had to look up called All Things Are Possible by the Harmonizing Four. And I love how as he's walking into court, the agent beside him is just kind of looking at him sideways like, who the fuck is this clown that I'm escorting to court? And then he says, it's showtime as he walks in. And this scene was great because we got to see him be slimy, sleazy, Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman, but at the same time, doing the right thing, which is a very rare combination for him. And it was a very satisfying scene. And Jimmy just spills his guts and says that basically he just wanted Kim present, but he makes the bold claim that he helped Walter build his criminal empire. He also discusses Charles McGill and how he destroyed him and getting his malpractice insurance canceled, which drove him to suicide, which leads us to our final flashback with the great Chuck McGill, who always makes me think of one of my all-time favorite fake documentaries and comedies. This is Spinal Tap. If you've not seen This is Spinal Tap, go do so. But this show has gone through so many incredible evolutions in terms of the cast of characters that it's almost kind of easy to forget where the show started and how that love-hate relationship between the two brothers was really kind of the emotional core of the show for the first few seasons. And so, yeah, this was all just an opportunity for Jimmy to reflect on his life. And as Chuck points out, he says they always end up having the same conversation about the path that Jimmy is on. And then finally, we get to see the aftermath of all this chaos. And I wish the show had ended on the scene in the bus when you've got all these hardcore prisoners just chanting, Better Call Saul, Better Call Saul. I feel like it would have been a great way to kind of close out showing how he was back amongst his element. He's one of them. But we can forgive the show for giving us one final scene where he gets a visit from Kim where they light up like the old days. And we hear how Jimmy went from 7 years to 86 years with his with his punishment or with his sentence. And then, he never is one to get demoralized. As she leaves, he gives her the little 2-gun gesture and blows out the smoke, which was so cool. I need to start doing that. Instead of waving goodbye to people, I'm just going to... And anyway, I can't even speak. I'm at a loss for words. I don't know what else to say about this show. It's just been so fucking good. And in an era where so many shows and so many movies just suck big time, it's just a rare, wonderful, beautiful thing to be able to say, God damn, this show was fucking awesome the entire way through and stuck the landing. It didn't overstay its welcome. It never got lame. It just somehow it stayed good or kept getting better. And I'm just going to miss all these characters. I'm going to miss Lalo. I'm going to miss Nacho. I'm going to miss everybody. It's been an incredible ride, and I'm sure people will be talking about it and thinking about it fondly for many years to come. And like 25, 30 years from now, there will be kids who will be boasting and bragging about how there's this new crime show that they're really into. And all these old geezers are going to say, well, you weren't there during Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. That was like the zenith of crime entertainment on television, and we will never see its like again. And I don't know if we'll ever see something as good as this again, but Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan, they're not dead, so we'll see what comes next. And for this last thing I want to say, I'm going to do my best to channel my best Jimmy McGill or Saul Goodman energy in terms of salesmanship, because my podcast Wrong Reel is sponsored by Manscaped, and I like to push their products over here as well. So if you haven't heard already, it's smooth sack summer. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're scaped from pubes to bum. That's right, this is the summer to keep your balls cool while still looking hot with Manscaped. The leader in below-the-belt grooming is making sure we all have a ball this summer by giving our pants partners everything they need to stay fresh. Dive headfirst into smooth sack summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with our code WRONGREEL. That is WRONGREEL in all caps. I'll leave a link in the description below. But that's it. The next show I'll be covering is going to be House of the Dragon this Sunday. Fingers crossed it delivers. But if you want to talk more about Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, House of the Dragon, or whatever, hunt me down on Twitter at Geeking Out. And please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Hope everybody had as much of a blast with this show as I did. And I look forward to whatever comes next. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.